So welcome. I see everyone's joining us in the chat. That's fantastic. So thanks everyone for joining us in here. And then for those of you who are watching on Facebook, just send us a comment, say hi, let us know it's working, you see us, and we'll get started here with this wonderful panel. I'm really excited about this. We did a version of this at WordFest for those of you who were able to join the sponsor table we had there. And there was so much great information that we got together afterwards and said, we have to bring this to the full audience where everyone can join and do this again and have the recording available and all that. So thank you to Hans and Christina and Corey and Jeff for agreeing to do this again and to have everyone here. We've got a ton of registrants, a ton of you guys watching live, and plenty more who'll be watching the recording. So thank you for that. And we will get started. We got Zach over on Facebook, so I see that's working. So let's go ahead and jump into things. So I'm Emily from GoWP, for anyone who does not know me. Welcome to today's panel discussion on selling your digital agency. So as you can see, we've got a powerhouse panel today, and I will introduce those panelists in just a moment. Really quick, I just want to say a couple words about GoWP. In case anyone watching isn't familiar with us, or this is your first time joining us for a webinar. So at GoWP, we are a team that is devoted to helping agencies grow by providing exceptional outsourced WordPress services. Agencies that partner with GoWP are able to focus on growth because they can depend on the team at GoWP to support that growth and scale with them. So whether it's growing your team with a dedicated developer or outsourcing the tedious services like maintenance and content edits, the GoWP team is here to support your agency. I also want to just mention that if you haven't created a GoWP partner account, it's 100% free and gets you access to all sorts of resources to grow your agency. So currently in the knowledge base in there, we have landing page templates to help you sell care plans, a maintenance schedule lead magnet, landing page templates to help you generate leads and increase your recurring revenue, all sorts of documentation you can take and make your own to use with your clients and prospects. And we're always adding to that. And if you have any ideas of things that can further help you, I'm happy to hear them. So you can create that partner account at my.gowp.com. And if you have any other questions, just reach out to me. You can email me, emily@gowp.com. If you're not in our Facebook group yet, I'd love to have you there. So for those of you watching here in the Zoom room, it's the GoWP Niche Agency Owners Facebook group. I'll put a link to it in the comments. But you can reach me in there too. So just send me a comment or put a post up in that group and I'll be happy to help out. This panel discussion will be recorded. You can always find it practically immediately after in the Facebook group. And if not, I will be sending out a link to the recording most likely tomorrow. So you will have that as well. So yeah, if you have comments during this panel discussion, any questions, things that come up, use the chat. This panel is full of some veterans in the agency, so I'm sure they're all going to be watching the chat as well. But I'll bring that into the discussion. If you're watching on Facebook, comment with questions, and I'll bring that over into the panel discussion as well. So just let us know any questions or comments, and we'll be happy to address those. So let's not waste any more time on that, and let's introduce our panelists. So we have Jeff Mazier. Jeff is an entrepreneur experienced in owning, operating, buying, and selling companies. He's enthusiastic about helping small business owners make progress and win. And currently with the Business Value Academy and Virtual CFO, Jeff helps small business owners in the facilitation of strategy by leading execution while focusing on progress and improvement. So welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. Corey Miller. Corey is a passionate entrepreneur who believes in finding and maintaining work happiness that aligns with your purpose and plays to your strengths, talents, and ambitions while challenging you to do the great things with your life. In 2008, Corey started iThemes, and after a decade of successful business, in January 2018, it was acquired by Liquid Web, which is, as most of you probably know, a premier web hosting company. And it's now an independent unit within that company. Currently, he runs the Business Value Academy along with Jeff. So hey, Corey, welcome.
Hey, Emily, thanks for having me. And I already have a question for Hans. What is the customer or the lifetime value of a chicken? He said 2 eggs every 3 days, I think. And so I want to pose that ahead of time to Hans so he can be thinking about it.
LTV of the chickens.
So we can jump into it now, but chickens, they last like 20 years.
And I guess for like the first half of their life, that's actually when they lay eggs. So calculation wise, probably not worth it.
I don't know. We need to get Jeff's feedback on that. He's already got a spreadsheet up. But we need to know, the value of that chicken over time. Does it lay less eggs, more eggs? But Jeff can help us, right, Jeff?
Oh, we could probably have a spreadsheet put together for that.
Yeah.
Sounds excellent.
There we go.
Excellent. Nice one, Hans.
All right, we will get to that question and more. Let's introduce Christina Romero. So Christina is the founder of WP Care Market, where she connects small business owners with quality website professionals for ongoing website care. She began as a website developer with her company KR Media and Designs, creating websites for companies that include Coca-Cola, Food Network, and Hollywood celebrities. In 2020, Christina successfully sold her agency and created a course on all that went into that process. So welcome, Christina.
Hello.
And last but not least, we have our chicken farmer, Hans Skilrud. Hans is also known as the Vice President of Termageddon, and he oversees sales and marketing. Before that, Hans ran a 12-person web design agency in downtown Chicago for 7 years and sold it in March of 2019 to focus all of his attention on Termageddon. In his free time, Hans enjoys history, philosophy, reading, drinking whiskey with his friends, chickens, and he also enjoys beekeeping, hunting for morel mushrooms, which the season's coming up soon. I've been watching for those,
That's right.
walks with his wife and 2 dogs. So welcome, Hans.
Thank you for having me.
So, all right, let's see. Let me just get all my screens up. And we've got plenty of people watching over on Facebook, so that's fantastic. All right, let's jump right in. So the first question that a lot of times comes up on this discussion, it came up last time on this discussion, we had a lot of great feedback, is how to value your agency. So let's say you don't have someone approaching you for sale or anything like that, but you're kind of beginning to think, what is the value of your agency? How can you go about kind of putting a number on that, an objective number that gives you a ballpark on what to expect when going into that conversation at some point? And we can start with Christina. Do you want to start this one off?
Sure. Actually, yeah, because about this time last year is when I was having that question for myself, because I was getting my agency ready to be sold. So I was going over that myself at this time last year. I think it depends a lot on the size of the agency. Some people as freelancers, some people as small web agencies, mid-size, large. We have kind of a gamut here on the panel here that can speak to that. I can speak to the small web agency, the one that sort of has a limited list of website care plan clients, probably a couple projects a month kind of thing. Small operation of maybe 2 or 3 people, mostly virtual workers. That's kind of where I was. And there was a myriad of things that sort of come together to allow you to put a price on your agency. And I would say price, but really the value is determined in the conversation between you and whoever is buying, because as we see right now in the housing market, perception is value. And so if someone really, really wants your agency, they're going to pay a lot more. And that's really a conversation between you and who ends up buying the agency. So there is that, what they're willing to pay. But we have the revenue from care plan clients going into that, or that recurring revenue, that predictable revenue you have in your agency coming in every month. You want to get that to a point in which it's as profitable as possible and sort of runs by itself. So when you're selling your agency, people have an idea of how much revenue that is going to bring in, whether they have any more project work or not, right? So that's the biggest determining factor in my case, was that recurring revenue number. And then also when it comes to project work, you really can't expect a buyer to sort of pay you for projects that have already happened. So you need to have a really good understanding of your lead generation machine, or how many projects you get from your current client list, or how many leads you convert a month, to give a predictable number of what you feel will come in the following year or 2 as it relates to projects. So you need to really understand that as well. Also, another big asset in determining value would be, another reason for determining value is assets. So the processes you have in place that help everything run smoothly, you probably spent years perfecting that. The people who work for you can be an asset who get transferred over when you sell your agency or you're trying to determine value. Any, lifetime deals for plugins or software that you have that's carrying over to help run the agency. There's a lot of things that you can kind of package up together to arrive at what your assets are. So when you put all that together, it can be determining a percentage of things. You can have a number in mind that you want to get to and kind of make it a combination of, an upfront amount and then a percentage of commission over time to sort of arrive at that. But those are the different factors I think that help with a small web agency in determining what your value is, looking at those different numbers. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, and we'll get into this a lot, I'm sure, is really what a buyer will pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Christina. Those are some great insights there. And Jeff, I know you had quite a bit to say about this in our previous discussion as well. What can you add there?
Yeah, I think we talk about it a lot inside the Business Value Academy of range of value for us. And I think that a lot of things that Christina already said, I hold to be true and accurate. But again, each agency is unique. I think I'll answer the question this time by kind of giving you an example. And that is, if you go to sell your car, right? What's the value of your car? And if you look at a Toyota Corolla might have a range of value, and that's like the good, better, best, right? Like the beater value and the pristine condition value. I think the same could be said about businesses. When you compare the two, there is a range of value of a Toyota Corolla can only generate a max dollar amount no matter what you do to it, right? For that age of vehicle. If you're looking at a Lamborghini, we're in a different price range, right? And I think when I compare the two, the Toyota Corolla being maybe, as you mentioned, a smaller agency that might be profitable and seeing some success, but it's not this Goliath agency, right? Not a mammoth organization. The bigger you are, I think probably the higher the cap or the higher the potential ceiling is around value. And then, so once you're inside of a range of good, better, best, right? That medium, low, high range, I think then it comes down to identifying the actual indicators for your business in your specific niche market of what drives value, right? What are the indicators, as a couple of them were mentioned, recurring revenue, right? The assets within an organization, the marketing engine and the way that you generate. Is this a profitable, sustainable, recurring in a way that is repetitive and consistent and predictable? What does that machine look like? And then I think we can start actually talking about value. I mean, if you look at houses within a small geographical, within your neighborhood, those houses sell typically, right? I mean, they're all in decent condition or at least in similar conditions, and you're looking at dollars per square foot. When you get in the commercial world, no two businesses are alike. So at the end of the day, the real answer is, what is a willing buyer willing to pay to me and what I'm willing to give up for it? That's the real answer. What do I want to get out of it? Now, what we found is in our limited experience here is that when people come into the Business Value Academy, they sometimes have a range that is, I would take $5 million for my company. And when you really break it down and look at it from an outside perspective, the realistic range of that might be something different. So I always say, get to a realistic range so that you know what you're driving for and know the key levers that actually drive value.
And I was going to add, in addition to the great comments by Christina and Jeff, is just being here today and having this conversation is a huge first step that I didn't take, by the way. What Jeff and I have partnered up to do is to help other entrepreneurs not make the mistakes we did, which is coming to the last, like when it's time, the intersection of time and the opportunities or whatever it is, being late to the game of having this conversation about business value and an exit. Most entrepreneurs, including myself, think, I don't want to exit. Now, Han's stories is really great, and I can't wait for him to tell it, but he was way more proactive and visionary than I was. I was like, oh crap, it's time to sell. What do we do? So first and foremost, I want to say, if you're here listening to this conversation, you're taking a great step forward. But if you think about the stock market, for instance, they obsess about two big things. One is dividends or profits, but the second is the value of the stock. And it's something that Jeff and I have scratched our heads after we, recover from our uh, hurt and mistakes. We go, why don't entrepreneurs do that? Like we talk about the inevitable exit. At some point, we will exit our businesses, whether we choose to or want to. We want entrepreneurs to be on the offense and not on the defense like we had been. And that means obsessing also about business value. And by the way, and Jeff can talk to this too, and the others here, business value is about also business health. If you have a valuable business that somebody else would go, I want to buy that on multiple, that's a better business for you. Because if we try to shift your perspective, not about you running the business, take the outside perspective inside your business and go, what do you think would be valuable? And 9 times out of 10, 100% of the time, I would say is those things that an investor would want are the things you as the operator, the owner, the leader of that business also want. And so I'm just glad we're having this conversation. Thank you all at GoWP for having it.
Thanks, Corey. Those are some great comments there. And Jeff, really great insights. There's a couple questions that have come up just in the little bit that we've been talking so far, but I think they're pertinent. So one is a question that was actually submitted prior to the panel discussion, but I think it fits in nicely here. And that is, Christina, you talked about it a little bit in terms of assets, and Jeff, you talked a little bit in terms of, having the processes in place in your agency. So how important is it to have those things documented and have processes in place, but being able to then transfer those processes to a potential buyer, right? So what does that look like, and how important is that when it comes to selling an agency or an exit strategy?
Do you
Jeff?
remember okay, I'll take it. Since nobody else went off mute, I'll take it. I would imagine that all of us on the call remember how difficult it was to create the systems that you have in place and the processes that you have in place today. It takes years to perfect it. It's a continuous improvement process where it's never ending, to be honest with you. Just as soon as you think you have it right, you learn something else from a customer and you want to change the way that you deliver or change an internal process. Could you imagine, again, when we talk about the business value mindset, we say, put the hat on as a potential outside investor. And could you imagine coming in and buying a business that didn't have those things in place and was always one-off every time a customer came to you and said, I want to use your service? You had to reinvent the wheel every time. Like, it's not scalable, right? This is what we talk about not only documented systems and processes, but habitually followed, right, processes and systems. I think it's critical. Now, my yin and yang partner here, Mr. Corey Miller, I will tell you, we laugh about this back and forth because I'm more of the checklist, get it done, everything has a checklist. And Corey might not necessarily be, except on, as we've talked about a number of times, some of the high level issues, right? Like, how do I generate content? What's my calendar for that? What's my schedule for that, right? The consistency of it that leads to the outcome on the backside.
Yeah, great insights there.
Yeah,
Jeff, Christina, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I'd love for Hans to jump in too about what kind of processes he had as well when he went to sell. But I think that's also, just wanted to kind of grab the ear of the people listening, is that you don't have to be in a position to sell your agency to add value. Like everything Jeff is saying right now, and the idea of getting your processes in place is the whole reason I even formed WP Care Market Training. Was that is what made the value of my agency, made it worth waking up every day and doing everything that I was doing, is because I had such clear processes. So if you're here wondering what the value of your business is or your agency is, the place to start is really focusing on processes, and you will benefit from that. You don't ever have to sell to benefit from that and what you will get out of working on that.
Absolutely. Hans?
Yeah, I think all great points so far on processes. The fact is when someone goes to buy a business, they're wanting to give you, let's say, $1, and they're expecting to make more than $1. So if you don't have paperwork on how they can turn $1 into more than $1, then you're at a disadvantage. because it's going to be more difficult to find someone willing to buy from you because yeah, okay, you might have some accounting that's done and hey, look, I'm profitable according to this accounting. Well, how did you make that money? Like, how did you turn the money coming in and have less expenses than revenues? So that's all told through the story of standard operating procedures or processes. So having those in place for me was a fundamental change in how I ran a business. And I always thought to myself, before I had standard operating procedures, I feel like I was running a glorified like hobby to a certain degree because I was just kind of things were coming in and I was just reactive rather than building a business where rather than trying to figure out, on a per client basis, how I want to run my company, I had processes in place and all of a sudden I started managing my processes more than I started managing the clients. So I learned how to say no to clients that were not a good fit. I learned how to say yes to the clients that were a good fit because they worked with my processes. So outside of the fact that processes are extraordinarily valuable and necessary when selling your business, I would say it helps you grow. It helps you become more profitable yourself. So there's no reason not to have them.
Absolutely. Great, really great comments there. So I think those are
I just
hitting
want
home.
to add I want to add one last thing, and that is processes help you become more efficient, which drives down the cost of delivery. And having standard processes in place will help you with one of what I think is a key lever, and that's ease of transition for a potential buyer. The ease of transition is something that you have to consider is who could buy my business, and if I can remove myself and have an easy transition for a potential buyer, that pool of potential buyers becomes bigger.
Processes increase liquidity. Maybe that's a good summary statement right there. The more liquid you become, the more easily you can sell your product or your company to someone else. And processes are necessary to be highly liquid, as liquid as you can selling a company.
So to that point, there's value in that. So when you go to sell your business, it's not just what the revenue is, but the inner workings. So there's an assigned value to it.
Yeah, I love all of those comments, and they're really hitting home because we're getting quite a few comments. So it's resonating. One question is, are having your processes documented in a Google Drive document sufficient? Is that something you can package along with the sale? Does that work?
Yeah, that's what I used. I'm a huge advocate. I think when we hear the word process, we all start to freak out. Like it's literally like writing up, go to GoDaddy, buy domain, share domain with, business owner. And it's really just what you naturally do and just writing it out. But there's this thing that happens from after you write up your processes where it's like, okay, if you can stick to it by always going back to your processes on how you do things, you're building something that is scalable and much more palatable to a potential buyer. So Drive is great. That's what I used.
I want to jump in here because I don't want to jump in on a different question, but it's in line with what Inzar is saying in the chat, basically like, but don't your processes have to be fluid if someone's going to come into your company? I think what someone who's buying your business wants to know is if you say, I take $100 a month care plan and I profit $80 off of that $100 a month care plan, they're going to want to know what the processes is that they can receive that profit. And so that's the way in which we're talking about process. Tools, process should be able to be fluid in terms of tools. So maybe you can change the certain tools in that way. So another buyer may have different tools, but the idea behind the process is really for them to tweak rather than for you. So you need to do what is going to give you the most efficiency and the most profit in your business. And then the buyer can choose where they want to tweak those and can experiment along with, changing that.
I would say a potential buyer looks at the deal as well in terms of does your organization habitually follow the processes that you do have in place? So again, ease of transition. Are they able to make potential future considerations and changes that your team is willing to abide by? So those are things that I think of when I think of these consistent processes. It's all about repeatable, right? What is the repeatable processes? And when you're asking about building a system that would be for a potential buyer, to me, that conversation starts to become very strategic if I have a direct strategic opportunity in mind of what I'm building for. But for me right now, I would much rather it be consistent personally, to drive immediate value to me, which means more money to my bottom line.
Yeah, great insights there. Let's change gears a little bit here. So talking about value, still staying on that topic, but we've talked about recurring revenue. We've talked about assets a little bit in terms of processes and that sort of stuff. But what are some other ways that folks watching can increase their value objectively, apart from recurring revenue? What are some other things that go into that value? Hans?
So the fact is, I think most good web agencies get a lot of referrals from their clients. So their clients refer you more business. And I think rather than saying, oh, this is just a nice little bonus, I would say focus on that and focus on nurturing your client relationships. Because the more however they come in through your website, from organic or from clients that just like your work, these are all things that generate more revenue for your business and hopefully more profit. So focus on where where most of your business drives, and like improve that as much as possible, because recurring revenues, as Christina said, obviously, and she mentioned a few things I even wrote down because I completely agree, but the recurring revenue side, that's a lot more straightforward of a conversation. But with contract work, people need to understand, if you've already performed the work of a client project, you're not going to get paid for that work you've already performed. Well, technically, if you weren't paid for it and an invoice is out, you will get paid for that detail. But I'm saying, like a project you launched 2 years ago, you can say, well, look at all this money I made 2 years ago. Well, that's not guaranteed to come in 2 years for me. So really what I like to advocate for is understand where your leads come from, nurture that. And that is what you want to disclose to the buyer of, like, this is how my leads come in. So I had a lot of leads come in from clutch.co. I also had a lot of leads come in from clients referring us. And so none of that work was ever guaranteed. That I didn't, when someone inquired, that didn't mean we have a 10-year contract to do work for them, but we could measure, okay, this is how much leads we get. This is how many leads we get on a regular basis. And I want to be paid out for the deal for like I'll take a certain percentage of revenue for all the sales you do for the next 3 years that come from my brand. I think that's something that, with recurring revenues, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but you can get paid multiples upfront on. With project work, like building a new website, that's stuff that you most likely, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone on the panel here, but project revenue is something you get paid out in the future once the buyer has acquired it and is taking in leads. And that brings me into like a level of trust that you have to have with that buyer. And we'll get to that shortly, I'm sure.
Yeah, and just to build off of the conversation around brand bringing value, I want to begin by echoing what he said about the client list, that typically majority of web agencies are selling their client list more so than they are selling their brand. It really depends on what you do and what products you have and what services you do. But majority of them are selling a client list. So for you to increase value would be to really nurture your client list, to get them on a lot of different recurring revenue types of things, right? So not just a care plan, but like, are you doing SEO for them? Are you doing marketing for them? Really building a kind of a structure around your client and really getting to nurture them. But as far as what he's saying about brand, I think this is a really, really in-depth kind of conversation that I think Jeff and Corey will add a lot to as well. Is, my husband's company is going through a big, $1 billion acquisition. The brand will stay the same, so everything that company has done for, I think it's been 15, 16 years now, continues. The name's still there. The marketing channels are still there. Everything's the same. And every brand value that dollar they've invested in marketing is part of that value in the acquisition. With agencies, a little bit different. Most agencies are acquired in a way where the brand dissolves. So if you spend a lot of time and money working on Google reviews, for example, but they're not going to keep your brand name around or your website up, or they're just going to absorb your clients, then that doesn't really bring any value to the buyer. So if you have spent a lot of time building the brand and a lot of time in SEO optimization for certain words to drive to your website, a lot of guest articles, Google reviews, Yelp, all of this different stuff, you're probably going to want to find a buyer that is looking to keep the brand active, the brand still alive, and they're just going to run it concurrently with their agency, kind of as, as the owner of that, and not really kind of mold it into theirs, if that makes sense. So you have to think about it that way. Yes, there is value in really building your brand up, but at the end of the day, how many buyers are looking to take over your brand rather than them just absorbing your client list to build their brand?
Yeah, really great comments there, Christina. Jeff or Corey, do you have anything to add?
Well, so I'm curious, repeat the question for me real quick.
So it started out, we're talking about how to increase value of the agency objectively, kind of like what agency owners can do to up that number.
Well, that's where I thought we were going. I think all great conversation. I think for me, I would encourage everyone to first start with the identification of the individual key levers for their business, of what they believe, putting a buyer's hat on, what would be important to a potential buyer, right? And I think all the conversations that we've had here are fantastic. These are great comments by Hans and Christina. I look at predictable, sustainable, repeatable, profitable returns. And how do you create that, right? The easiest way when you start talking about this goodwill stuff and the systems, the marketing engine. By the way, marketing engine is a strategic lever for GoDaddy. So if you can think of from a very high level, some of these publicly traded companies out there, that is a strategic objective of theirs if you go read their 10K. So I think that if you want an indication of how good your goodwill is, you turn off the spigot. And if you didn't place any ads today, for how long would that still maintain? Would you still have recurring revenue coming in? Would you still have leads coming in the door? And those are the things that I think that would increase value. But you have to identify each of the levers first. So when you start talking about a system or a framework or a process, that's where my strategic planning hat goes on, which is identify the levers first, identify the ones that are extremely important, right? Then start thinking through your 1-year goal and your 90-day goals, right? Breaking it off into chunks as far as things that you can do to improve your position for each of those individual key levers.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. Corey, I'm not sure. I saw that you had unmuted yourself. Yes. I'm not sure if you had something you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, I apologize being off and on here. So I know it's been said recurring revenue, and that's the holy grail. But if I were to go back years ago, I would have focused obsessively on recurring revenue. If I don't have it in my business now, how can I do it? And then if I have it, how do I keep stacking? Like that would be my obsessive number, is how much recurring revenue I have. And then probably second is to be proactive about having the conversations in the market with other people for the buyers, the potential people that you think would buy your business. That's one of the things we do in the academy is we think through right now, even if you don't want to exit, is who would potentially buy your company? And without judgment, put everybody possible. Even if you go, I'd never sell them a million years, put them down anyway. And then look and reflect and go, what would they value about our business? And that's the obsessive things. Take 2 or 3 things and make, recurring revenues that, holy grail. But what are the 2 or 3 things that those potential acquirers would want? Validate it with your own experience and just consistently work on that over and over and over.
Great. Thank you, Corey. I appreciate that. Let's use this. I think this is a perfect time to transition into the next question, which is, I'm sure a lot of people watching right now don't have offers flying in the door. They're not actively selling their agency or in the middle of negotiations or anything like that, but maybe they are considering, down the road, exit strategies. What are some things that you thought of when thinking about selling your agency? What are some things you wish you had thought of? Let's talk a little bit about planning for that possible end game there. Who wants to start with this one?
I just want to piggyback off of something that was mentioned in the chat, which fees into this is asking if he should stay in his own country, you know, with the UK, or do you find a buyer from the US? So that's one thing to think about. Legal issues. That was a big thing that I didn't know until I got into it. It's kind of why I created the course on buying and selling a small agency, because we, the buyer, we spent so much time with the contract lawyer that we're like, we have to share this because this is so worth its weight in gold. And so that's part of the buying and or selling a small web agency course that we have at WP Care Market Training. But with that, it's a US contract. It's a US contract. And if you start thinking about what's, you know, the legal issues of trying to do that across, if you're in Australia or if you're in the UK, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really specific to the country. So you need to think about some of the legal things around that. You need to think about getting your business in a shape in which you can hand it off. So that means separating out finances. If you have passion projects or other things going on, you need to make sure your finances are separated. It has its own bookkeeping, that you have your emails that you're using are not tied to your personal email, but it's, you know, so all of this cleanup that has to happen, this preparation, if you will, that needs to happen before any of that ever happens. And that can be tough because most of the time as business owners, we're just barreling forward until like 10 years later, we realize we're still using a Gmail for access to people's, you know, Google Analytics accounts. And you're like, at some point I need to make this a professional email that could be passed off to a buyer. So there's a lot of different preparation that has to go into it. And it could be preparing for 3 years, 5 years before you ever do this, or 6 months, but certainly there's a lot of thought that has to be into it, and legal being a big thing there. You know, are you going to keep your legal entity? Are you going to dissolve it? Are they just going to have you change your business name and they take your business name as a DBA? All of those things.
Really, really great insights there. And I love that it kind of ties into that doing all of these things, thinking these things through, all it is doing, even if you don't sell, it's just going to improve your business regardless of where you end up, right? So that's really great insights there. Jeff, did you have some comments on this one?
I mean, I think it's pretty well said, to be honest with you. I don't have any added thoughts on this one.
Great. Corey, how about, I know that you shared a little bit in our previous discussion about, you know, things you wished you had thought of, I guess. Is there anything that, you know, Christina hasn't mentioned that if you're able to talk?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Emily. So if I go meta a little bit, I would say, what happens after you sell? You know, Jeff, I walked through Jeff's exit about 2 years before mine. And then as a dear friend in my life, he walked through mine. Still walking, by the way. So part 2, whatever the next chapter is, I'll tell you, I didn't have it mapped out. And so I just wanted to keep renewing the iThemes contract, like in the sense of I had the best job I'd ever had in my life with the people I love, serving people I really like, and doing work that, you know, ticked my box for me. But I didn't have what was phase 2. Now, a lot of people did, like Hans. I love his stories. He was ready to go on to something else that became Termageddon. But I didn't have a plan B. It was just plan A at iThemes. And so thinking about how you want your life to go, you know, if you're thinking I'm going to exit in 5 years, cool. What are you going to do the next day? Now, I had so many friends tell me take 6 months off and, you know, just do things analog. And I was like, well, I don't like to do things around my house because if I try, I'll break them worse than they already are. I don't like to garden or do any of that kind of stuff. And so the identity of the entrepreneur so baked in, but what do I do on Monday at 8:30 when I've done for the past 10 years, logged on and done this? It's a bigger thing than you would expect. And that would be the one thing I would add to this conversation.
Thank you, Corey. I think that's important too. And maybe it's not something that a lot of people do consider when going through this process. So I really appreciate you pointing that out and sharing your personal experience on that. Hans, would you want to talk a little bit about you know, how it happened with your agency and transitioning into full time with Termageddon?
Yeah, I love to share this resource during when discussing this topic. bizbuysell.com, bizbuysell.com. I just added the link, and I know this is kind of some shameless, well, it's not self-promotion, but Business Value Academy, you know, we have Jeff, we got Corey from this group. I can't stress enough, like, I wish things like that were around back when I was selling my agency, or at least I knew about things like that, because this is like one of those areas where consulting is extraordinarily valuable. It can literally mean an extra zero to your paycheck, to when selling a business. So, you know, businessvalueacademy.com, check it out. Like, I can't say that I've gone through it, but I've now connected with Jeff a few times. I know Corey very well. So, you know, it's a huge thing I'm an advocate for now. But anyways, bizbuysell.com is the website where I went to list my company for sale. In 48 hours, I had, I think, about 3 dozen qualified inquiries of people wanting to buy my company. I'm not special in this case. BizBuySell just connects buyers with sellers of companies. For me, I think the thing that I dumb lucked myself into was I paid like $60 for a listing on the site, and I had 36 potential buyers to speak to. So it took about 3 hours per person in terms of like things they requested that were beyond what I had by default. So I would say an average about 3 hours per person of initial conversations, and people just naturally fizzle out if they're not interested. But by having that many potential buyers, I gave myself leverage because I had reference. I was able to not have someone take advantage of me because I'm only speaking to one person about possibly buying me out. Like, talk about just a high risk move. I'm not saying that, you know, you might get lucky and they pay way more than anyone else is willing to pay, but you also might get unlucky where you're offered way less than what other people are willing to pay. And once you get rid of, and I think Corey kind of touched on this a little bit, but like, I think it's so tough for people to let go of a business because they've identified it with it so long for so many years. And you got to remember, a business is just something that, you know, it's for reporting to the government saying, this is how much profit I made and this is how much I owe you, government. Like, eventually you got to let go of that baby and like let it do its thing. And, you know, with Biz Buy Sell, you give yourself the option to give the best chance at having the right buyer take the company and go from there. And there's many other sites. That's the one I used, for the record.
And just to give a nice other end of the spectrum complement to that, another thing you can do is what a lot of people are doing here is networking to get to know other web agency owners. So I think this is a nice approach if you're going with a commission approach. So rather than a flat out fee, although Hans got really lucky with having both and a good guy he ended up finding. But especially if you know that a commission structure is going to work well for you, if someone taking over the company, you get a commission over time. Getting into these Facebook groups, the GoWP agency niche group, or my WP Care Market group, and just getting to know, going to events, going to WordCamps, going to, once we get in person again, going to R3, my event with Robert Simmons in Orlando, getting to know people and getting to see how they run their business, getting to see, are they trustworthy? Do you like them? Forming relationships. And you can actually build a really nice network of people that when you are ready to sell, you can approach people who are close to you and let them know. And it's going to be a total opposite end of the spectrum. You're probably not going to get the 36, but you might get 2 or 3 that you are comfortable with saying, you know what, my clients will be good over here. I know I will get commission over time, and the transition will be smooth.
I want to jump in and just share a really random thought I've been wanting to share all day today. So, you know, we're talking about selling your business. And I think for the listeners of today, I want you to also understand there's an opposite to this, which is buying agencies. Yeah. I think this is yet again another topic that's just not discussed enough in this world. Everyone talks about, how do I get more leads from Google? How do I get more leads from Google? Like, did you realize like you can buy recurring revenue? You can literally buy accounts already. They already have a website. You can find a seller that builds with your theme and your web, you know, and using WordPress or whatever. There are people wanting to sell their businesses just as much as you're wanting to buy, and talk about a way to gain recurring revenues. So I'm in a unique situation where I had bought a agency while running my agency, and the former owners, amazing tech people, not so good at customer service. And that's kind of an area where I like to thrive in. And, you know, from what I bought it to, I just made a few phone calls to the people who, hey, I bought this company. I'm now going to take care of your account. How quickly those exploded, those introductory conversations exploded. One of them was a multi six-figure account every year that, according to their books, was like a one-time $4,000 charge. I called them and I introduced myself and said I bought the company, and they're like, oh, we have this project, and one project led to another. So just remember that even if you're not thinking about selling your business right now, outside of the fact that it's just in general good to have an exit strategy, there's a whole other realm here, which is the fact that you can buy businesses with the same exact logic. You're learning from people who are saying what they want to look for when selling their business. This is great information for you to consider when wanting to buy recurring revenue companies.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can buy a business to then sell. So, you can buy a business and grow, and in 2 years, perfect your entire client list. And then you're going to be selling at an even higher price, even by buying.
Yeah, and Hans, let me just piggyback on what you're saying there. I also think it's important to understand, again, the framework that you go through to put a value on a company, right? To understand what that range of value is, so that you arm yourself with information to be confident enough to be able to have a conversation when someone either approaches you or you approach somebody else, and whether in your mind you are buying or selling your business at a premium or at a discount. And this becomes that strategic, get on offense, understand the framework, understand the range of value, and now you're playing chess and not checkers.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, I want my fellow entrepreneurs to have options, and the best options. And like Hans, Jeff, and Christina have said, we're trying to give you options to say, hey, like Hans flipped around and said, what if you go acquire? Like, for instance, in his example, maybe that team doesn't want to run the business. I talked to so many developers over the years. They didn't want to do business. They tried the freelance route. What they really wanted was just the code. Well, there might be an opportunity that if you just, like Christina was saying, go to R3, by the way, an amazing summit. I've been there, and it is so awesome. But network with people, and then you might uncover something. And it's like they've gotten themselves into a job, and they don't want to, they just want a job. And you're trying to build a business, and you could go, okay, well, I do marketing, or I do this component. You don't have to do that. You can just come in and do the stuff that you enjoy. And there might be an acquisition opportunity, but it all goes to, we want, all of us on this call want entrepreneurs to have the most options. And you have that by making sure you're exploring all of the options and doing some of the tips and things that we've shared, and then learning from our mistakes as well, so that you get to decide your own future.
Thanks, Corey.
Can I say Corey's voice, Corey, you need to record like encouragement audio tracks that people can download, because, well, Corey spoke at R3, but when Corey gets into like what he just did there, like buttoning up this entire thing so beautifully, I'm like, I just could sit and listen to his voice to encourage me forward every day.
It'll be for sale at the end of the day at BBA for $10 a voice, custom voiceover.
Pricey, but it's worth it. Okay. All right.
I agree, Christina. Corey, you have a special knack for kind of wrapping things up and putting things succinctly. So thanks for chiming in at the end of our little sections here. I want to ask a question that was submitted by Lee Jackson in our Facebook group earlier, and that is kind of, it's a little bit abstract, but let's see, what made you sell your agency? So a lot of the folks watching, I would say, it's, as entrepreneurs, these are your businesses. You have a personal connection with them. And a lot of times, most of the times your customers also have a personal connection with you. So the question was kind of, when the clients, when the customers, when all of the contacts are connected to you personally, and you like to think that there is that personal investment there, how do you reconcile those two things with selling the agency off to somebody else?
I can start this one off. So I'm going to have to tear off the Band-Aid. At least for me, you are not as special as you think. At least I wasn't. I thought I was, my clients, I'm so close to them. They're They love me. They love the service I provide. Yeah, I think like out of the 300 clients we had, like one called me to just congratulate me on the sale. And then everyone else just went with the new buyer. The fact is people want the service, and the fact that they're friendly with you and have a great relationship is the secondary thing. They need help with their website, and that was what you were there fundamentally to help them with. So remember the fact that as special and as close as you may be to your clients, that's just great customer service. And that a buyer, any good buyer, would have all the intentions in the world at fostering those already well-nurtured websites. So keep that in mind. I just had to chime in with that one. I'll let everyone else take. Well, I guess I'll just say, for me, I was in a unique situation where I had another company that was up and coming and like really picking up steam. So I was in a dilemma where I was, service-based, product-based, and I had to make a decision and I decided to sell my agency because of another opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks, Hans. I think that's really, really helpful insights. Christina, in your experience, how did that play out?
Yeah, so I was running my agency when I was part of another business training program and just sharing information of what I was doing. And that sort of led to me creating, training around website care. So in 2017, by the time I started putting WP Care Market together, I knew selling the agency was the end goal, because you just can't ride two horses. Something's gonna suffer. So it started to become more apparent in 2019. So in early 2020, pre-COVID, I was like, all right, this is going to happen this year. I just wasn't giving enough attention to my clients. My clients deserved more than that. And they deserved to have someone proactively really being dedicated to grow them. And I was starting to just really kind of get divided in a lot of different directions. So that was the catalyst. And then as far as the clients, I think what Hans said is true. They really care about someone caring about them. And if you're not giving them the attention that they need for whatever reasons, maybe you're selling for health reasons, maybe you're selling for another business, or maybe you're getting a full-time job. If you're no longer going to be able to care and focus on them, they want someone who's going to care and focus on them. So finding someone like me was important. Wasn't just the number for me. It was about finding someone I knew would run a business or treat my clients in a similar way that I was treating them. And so that was really important to me, finding someone that aligned there. Once that was done, we had phone calls to kind of introduce him, and that they could see that I really liked him and I'd known him, and they were going to be in good hands. So we did phone calls with the VIP clients. That we had sort of another section of clients that probably wouldn't have cared either way. So we sort of separated them out, VIP versus regular clients, and really tried to transition the VIPs really nicely in a more personal way.
That's really helpful, Christina. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Jeff, I saw you commented in the chat there that the single most important value lever is building a business that can operate without you. I think that really goes to kind of drive this point home here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a business that can operate without you is literally just a financial play for an outside investor. No different than putting money into an annuity, right? You put money in and you get this consistent piece of revenue that kicks back. If you can sell that business, if you can create that business that operates without your existence, I really call it freedom though, really. And that is the ability for you to choose where you spend your time, or for you to spend your time where it's most valuable to your organization, where you're not handcuffed to your desk, where you're not on the back end doing developing work, right? And the tedious things that you may not enjoy doing, right? Building that sustainable business that can operate without you, I think, is the single most critical element. In selling my business, the only thing that comes to mind as well that I would probably want to mention for the group is just not being prepared financially. Here I am, a CPA, and I'll just be the first one to raise my hand and admit this. There may have been some things that were questionable expenses that I ran through my business, right? That another operator and or government agency might not necessarily think would be a deductible business expense. And when I transparently tell you that, what I'm talking about is net income, and I was not prepared. I wanted to try to to beat down net income as low as possible so that I didn't pay very much tax. But the first thing that was asked of me during due diligence in the sale was, give me your last 3 years worth of tax returns and financial statements. And I wasn't prepared to convert the difference between a very low net income where we put everything else back into the business. So we had low profit margins, and try to have that conversation and convert that into what a realistic state is if you were just a third party investor. So it's a point that we talk about a lot in the Business Value Academy. I think that the getting to a discretionary earnings is extremely critical, and it at least arms you with the ability. It doesn't tell you you have to go pay more taxes. What it tells you is arm yourself with the ability to be able to have that conversation with someone, to show it and to prove it, and be prepared.
Thanks, Jeff. I think that those are some really great comments there that we haven't really gotten into yet. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to let people know, if you have some questions, put them in the chat and we'll try to get to some. But I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well. And I do want to take one moment and just give our panelists a huge debt of gratitude, and also let everybody here know watching that I put links to Christina's Buying and Selling a Small Web Agency course, which is on a 24-hour sale today in celebration of this panel discussion. So go check that out, no code necessary. And Business Value Academy, where Jeff and Corey are coming from, is fantastic, really great value, and you can check. I put the link to that in as well. And as members of the GoWP community, they have been kind enough to offer a 20% discount with code GoWP. So check that out. And we've got Hans's Termageddon, which is auto updating privacy policies. And I'm sure so many of you are already fans and customers of Termageddon. I know the majority of the GoWP community is. So I'll put a link to that as well. So thank you all for being on this panel and joining us. If you have time to stick around for a question, or if you need to jump off, I understand also. But we did get one question already coming in from Tara regarding, let's see, did we already answer it in the chat and I missed it? Basically team member churn. So did anyone have employees bail once the business sold?
So I had 12 employees. Transitioning and making sure the staff kept their jobs was a very big factor for me. I had offers for more than what I accepted from other people, but they told me they wanted to literally let go of everyone and just take the accounts to their New York office. I declined that offer because I wanted people to stick around. So I think it's all about, what are your goals in terms of like what you want? Do you want just as much money as possible and wave peace to everyone? I don't think that's typically the WordPress community, like at least from what I've seen. I think most people in our community are much more focused on just everyone winning. So just remember, if that's a variable that's important to you about reducing the risk of churn, keep that in mind when talking to buyers, and make sure you communicate that fact. That's not a weird thing to bring up. You absolutely can say, yeah, it's very important to me that these people say, but the way I would do it, I would ask them the questions first, figure out what their goals are with buying the company, so that you can kind of get a sense of if they are intuitively or just naturally going to want to keep the people around. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
So like Jeff was saying about the key levers and others, is doing everything you can, one, for the investor, the acquirer, to help them get a great asset, and not just the actual assets, but the team, the people, the human beings that get things done in the business. I was, because, some of my best friends in life are still on that team, by the way. I was very careful to make sure that the company they were going to was going to do their best to take care of them, as long as they showed up and continued to do the work, of course. But, what was awesome is when we did have, by the way, 2 people quit the very day of the acquisition because they didn't want to continue on. But showing that, like, okay, before when we were not, part of the Liquid Web family, there's no really upward mobility here, career-wise. Like, you come in, if you want the CEO role, you're going to have to like tackle me. And sometimes I wonder what I did there, but Liquid Web was, now I think it's up to 700 people. There's career upward mobility. And then also, hey, your healthcare got better. you're probably going to get paid and compensated better as you move in the company. So I think it's part of any of us that love to do profit and purpose as part of our businesses and making sure our team's taken care of. And that definition varies, but for me, it meant, some of that team got also a nice thank you for all of the work you've done for our team over the years in the terms of a bonus. And then also like hear all the advantages and trying to, for me, it's, can I sleep at night at the end of the day? And I can, because I knew I did the best for my team.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Hans, for taking that question. Let's see, I'm not sure if we got any, I haven't seen more questions come in, but I did want to point out, we did get one question. Jeff, Ryan was asking, and I saw you answered it in our chat, but just so everybody can know, do you, with your comments about being a CPA and some of those things, talking about net income and the financials of it all, I imagine there's plenty of people on this call that could use some help when it comes to the financials and working out those specifics. You have a virtual CFO offering. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. First, I would say is if you don't have a CPA, if you don't have an accountant that you trust, that you know and trust and love, find one, right? The foundation of any deal when you're talking about selling a business, again, that first question is, give me your financials over the last 3 years. So you want to know your numbers. The difference between a CPA and a virtual CFO and the things that I do, and there's plenty of people out there that do it as well, is translating your financial information into actionable insights. So what does it mean? What does it tell us? What are we actually driving towards? And a virtual CFO, in my opinion, or I would say as a good one, is a little bit business coaching, a little bit financial analysis, and a little bit strategic planning. And, we just help people think through the things that they can do, keep an eye on and monitor the things that are important, that are critical to success in the business, that define success. So that's really kind of a virtual CFO offering in a nutshell in the 1-minute elevator speech there.
Great, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And I do just want to note that if you're watching this in the Zoom room and you are not a member of the Niche Agency Owners Facebook group, there's a whole conversation going over there as well, going on over there in the live stream, and all of the links, if you haven't had a chance to grab all these links in the chat here, those are available over there too. And I'll be sending out links to those recordings and everything in the follow-up email. So if you have registered, you'll get that. So if you haven't been taking notes, don't worry, there is a recording and we'll have those links for you all. Okay, we're 5 minutes over. I want to wrap this up. Is there anything else anyone has to add from the panelists? We can go one by one. So let's start with Hans.
Have your processes in place, and use bizbuysell.com to not only list your company out to potential buyers, but also just to get a great understanding of our industry entirely. You can see what other people are listing their products or companies for sale. There's a wealth of information in websites like bizbuysell.com.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. Christina.
Yes. So yeah, I got to jump off, but just every hour you spend on your business, getting it organized, perfecting your recurring revenue, whether it's website care plans or SEO plans or marketing, getting your team processes in place, every hour you spend there is just money you're putting back in your pocket for your current day-to-day business, let alone selling it. So start doing that now, right now, yesterday, and then everything will be smoother moving forward.
Thank you, Christina, and thanks so much for joining us.
Sorry.
Yep, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Corey.
Yeah, I love everything. So I +1 everything here. But take time each month to not work in the business, but work on the business. To take a step back from being a firefighter to an investor. So we're going to we're trying to transition us from just saying we're entrepreneurs. We're investors in this thing that Jeff keeps talking about over and over, a cash engine that, by the way, is profitable, but also purposeful. So make sure every month, at least, you're taking some time away to work on the business, to think about where you are in your life too. Make sure that aligns with what you want. And by the way, that changes. I'm living proof of that. It changes maybe day to day sometimes, but like year to year, things will change. You know, I've got 2 young kids. They're going to be older. My needs and my dreams and aspirations are going to morph and change over time just because of my family. And so take some time away, find a cohort group. One of my best friends in life, Jeff, and I have walked together. We know things about each other that our parents and brothers and sisters don't even know. We've shared life with each other. And so make sure, one, you're thinking about yourself and taking some time away from the business to think about where you want to be. And the second, do it in a group of like-minded people. Look, the things that you have here in GoWP are a great start to that.
Thank you so much, Corey. Once again, really putting things in a nice tone to end it all. So thank you so much for calling in and joining us today. You've had some really great insights. Thanks for sharing your experience. Jeff, you want to take us home today?
Yeah, I would just say that keep in mind a healthy and well-prepared business for an exit is also a more profitable and healthy business for you in the here and now. So I love Corey's comments there that I'll piggyback off of as well and say, be on the offense, right? Think strategically, take time every month to think through what would affect the long-term value and improve the value. And when you do that and think long-term, putting that potential buyer's hat on and thinking about all the things that they would want when they buy your business, it's actually probably things that you would want for yourself in the current day, here and now. So it's a win-win all around.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. Great comments to end on. If you still have questions or questions come up afterward, put them in the Facebook group. I'll put the link here in the chat. For those of you who are watching on Facebook, you already have that. So put them in the Facebook group on this recording, or you can just post them as a question. Everybody on this call is in that group, so be happy to chime in and pitch in on some insights there. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to our amazing panelists, and maybe we'll continue this conversation down the road. Maybe we'll talk about buying agencies next, like Hans mentioned. So thank you all, and everyone have a great afternoon. We'll see you at the next one. Bye.